Welcome, everybody, to another episode of AWS Howdy Partner. Claudine, take it away.
Everyone, my name is Claudine Morales. I haven't been here in a very long time. I want to really quickly give a shout out to AM, who used to be my co-host in the previous life, but now he's just the producer behind the scenes because he's too cool now to appear on camera. Once upon a time, I hosted my first Howdy Partner episode, and I'm really surprised that they keep asking me to come back. But I think it's my dog who is actually here with me sleeping. So if you hear snoring noises, I promise you that's not me making like weird noises. It's really my dog. But welcome to another really, really cool episode of Howdy Partner. Howdy Partner is where we highlight AWS partner network partners who are doing really cool things with AWS and helping AWS customers enhance their use of AWS. I am here with a friend of mine, Rob Melka, who's also a partner solutions architect at AWS, who's going to co-host this episode with me. What's up, Rob?
Hey, Claudine. Thank you for that introduction. Glad to have you back. So in today's episode, we'll be providing you an overview of how you can operate your environment with speed and governance using some AWS services. Specifically, we'll be discussing AWS CloudTrail and AWS Config. We're also joined by Akshay and Shri from CloudHealth by VMware, an advanced technology partner. And they give us, they're going to give us a deep dive on creating policies and leveraging automation to integrate governance into your CI/CD pipelines. Akshay, Shri?
Hi guys, my name is Akshay. I am a senior product manager with CloudHealth by VMware. I'm mostly focused on AWS business initiative at CloudHealth. Shri?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Srivat Supadhyay. I'm a senior technical marketing architect at VMware. I primarily focus on our developer-focusing initiatives like our DevOps advocacy, as well as public cloud operations and security.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us, Akshay and Shri. I know that you're going to be demoing your product here today, and it's going to tie in with a few AWS services that Rob and I are going to talk about like very, very briefly. But maybe we should start by you guys talking a little bit about what does CloudHealth do? How does it help AWS customers with AWS?
We are most trusted cloud management platform in the industry right now. We help customers, AWS customers, in simplifying their financial management of cloud. We help them strengthen their security and compliance related to cloud, and we help them in streamlining their cloud operations as well, so that they're not wasting their time in nitty-gritties of managing the cloud. They are able to boost their productivity, have more standardization across their decentralized cloud usage operations, and have better handle on their cloud spend.
Fantastic. And what exactly are you and Shri going to cover here today? Maybe let's start by talking about what are the challenges? What are some of the challenges of using the cloud that CloudHealth helps customers solve?
Yep, certainly. So what happens when you get into your cloud journey as you are moving away from private clouds towards public cloud, such as AWS primarily, you start spending a lot. You feel free because you're not procuring any more assets now, but you have the same mindset as before. Because you are now thinking about your costs, you are thinking about how much time it will take to procure things when you are getting a lot of traffic for your application, but you're not able to get the resources required to handle that traffic in time. So when that happens, when that thought process kicks in, you start going into the mindset of procuring whatever you can as soon as possible. So you start spinning off the biggest instance possible that is available in CloudHealth, sorry, AWS. And that's where CloudHealth comes to help. We start tracking your inventory of AWS, and we help you in optimizing that inventory. We see where there are spend wastages, where could be possible optimizations in the inventory usage, where could be security loopholes, and we help mitigate some of those.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Akshay. Yeah, so visibility into your cloud infrastructure, no doubt, critically important for security, for costs. I actually want to talk about CloudTrail a little bit. And this is, Rob and I, when we were talking about this episode, we thought it would be very important to actually highlight CloudTrail here. And I'm going to talk about it just for a few minutes here. But what is CloudTrail? CloudTrail is an auditing, compliance, and governance tool. It allows you to log and monitor actions that are happening within your AWS infrastructure. These are actions taken from the AWS Management Console, AWS SDKs, CLI tools, and other AWS services. Why do you want to enable CloudTrail? Well, as Akshay has kind of led into here, it's really important for you to have visibility into actions being taken across your infrastructure. You want to have information on which users or services are taking which actions in your AWS environment and from where. So CloudTrail gives you this visibility. It also enables you to quickly detect events that are out of the norm and take corrective action on these events like immediately. And you really, really want that. We consider it as a fundamental best practice to have CloudTrail enabled here at AWS. As a matter of fact, AWS partners who go through technical validations in order to qualify for certain programs and tiers within the AWS partner network, one of the main controls that they are assessed against is CloudTrail enablement, along with what they are doing with their CloudTrail logs. It's really a core security best practice. So let's take a high-level look at how this works. And AM, I'm going to now share my screen.
You're good. You're set.
Awesome. Thanks for that. So how does it work? Well, first you create a trail. And there are two types of trails that you can create with CloudTrail. You can create a single region trail or a multi-region trail. As a fundamental best practice, you should create a multi-region trail even if you only have resources in one region. And why is that the case? Because having a multi-region trail gives you assurance that your account is really only using resources in the region you should be in. Imagine not monitoring the other regions and getting surprised at your next billing cycle by resources that really weren't supposed to be running in a different region, right? So enable multi-region trails, best practice. When you create a trail, CloudTrail starts recording activities in your AWS services as CloudTrail events. So these events end up in the CloudTrail console, in your AWS console, and also in an S3 bucket. So another fundamental best practice, and again, when AWS partners go through certain tech validations within the AP and we ask that they do this, the S3 bucket that is to contain your CloudTrail logs, put that in a separate account or administrative domain. The reason for that is in case your primary account gets compromised, you don't necessarily lose access to your CloudTrail logs. Optionally, you can also send your CloudTrail events to Amazon CloudWatch. Sending them to CloudWatch allows you to set alarms when certain events are detected. You probably want to get alerted on certain events. And not only that, but you probably want automated corrective action on those events as well. So for example, you may want to get alerted on changes to your IAM, Identity and Access Management, Policies. Security is job 0, right? Your IAM policies should follow least privilege. They should only grant the permissions that are absolutely needed, nothing more. If you set them based on least privilege and someone changes a policy to become overly permissive, you should know about that. So sending these CloudTrail events to CloudWatch allows you to set an alarm for when an IAM policy change happens so that you are in the know and you can respond to this change immediately. So with this information from CloudTrail, you're enabled to analyze security events that are happening across your AWS account. So I want to quickly show you the actual fundamental CloudTrail best practices that we have in the technical baseline review, or the TBR, which is a technical validation motion that assesses AWS partners' solutions against what we consider to be core AWS best practices. So as we've said, multi-region trails should be enabled. Also, turn on CloudTrail for all of your AWS accounts. Some think that just because it's not a production account, you shouldn't care about this type of visibility. You really should. You want to audit, you want to monitor and have governance over all of your AWS accounts, regardless of what you use them for. It could be dev, staging, everything. You want to know what's going on there. Enable log file integrity validation. What does this mean? So log file integrity validation is a feature that ensures your log files are not tampered with without your knowledge. So if you have to go through a security or forensic investigation, this is particularly important. So with log file integrity validation, CloudTrail creates a hash for every log file that it delivers. Every hour, it also creates a digest file, which is a file that references each of the logs it has delivered and the hash for each of those logs. So it lets you know if a log file was deleted or modified. We've already gone through the third point here, storing logs in a separate account or admin domain. The last one is protect your CloudTrail logs from accidental deletion or overwrite. For an S3 bucket, this means turning on MFA delete or versioning. Of course, you have other options to store your CloudTrail logs using other solutions. We have AWS partners that offer products you can use for this purpose. When using any solution, please keep these best practices in mind. Real quick, before I end my CloudTrail overview, there are 2 types of CloudTrail events: management events and data events. Management events are control plane operations. Examples of management events would include security and rule configurations, device registrations. By default, these are the types of events that CloudTrail logs. The other type, data events, these are resource operations or data plane operations. So for example, S3 object level API activities, those are data events. Lambda function executions are also data events. By default, data events logging is disabled. So you have to tell CloudTrail explicitly to log data events and for which resources you want to collect data events for. And that's really that. There's lots of helpful information about CloudTrail in the AWS official documents, so check those out. And Rob, as a tie-in to CloudTrail and having visibility into AWS environment, you're going to talk about another really important AWS service when it comes to this. I think you're going to talk about config.
Yes, AWS config is what I'll be talking about. And yeah, so in terms of AWS config, config is a service that enables you to assess, audit, and evaluate the configurations of your AWS resources. So one way to take a look at that and better understand this would be to ask the question, what questions does AWS config help you answer? So a quick way of identifying that, we have 3 categories specifically, inventory and configuration management. And in that space, we're looking at identifying what we currently have in terms of our inventory, EC2 instances, S3 buckets, basically having an overview of what's in your AWS region and AWS account or organization. So also being able to distinguish what the latest configuration state of a specific resource is, the relationships that exist between resources, and any changes that occur over a period of time. In terms of governance and compliance management, what we're looking at is, are your resources properly configured? Do your resources comply to regulatory requirements that you need to adhere to? And how do you ensure continuous compliance? And we'll be doing a quick demo. I'll be giving you a quick demo on how to achieve the compliance piece for a specific config rule. So what are the benefits, you ask? One of the biggest benefits is continuous monitoring. You're able to continuously monitor and record configuration changes for your AWS resources. So let's say an EC2 instance has been modified using the modify instance attribute API. You will have that change monitored and recorded over time. And then you can also be notified when a change occurs. So you can send that to SNS, or you can send that, from that you can then leverage CloudWatch events as well. Continuous assessment. In terms of continuous assessment, you can continuously audit and assess overall compliance of your AWS resource configurations to make sure they adhere to your baseline requirements or any compliance standards that you need to meet. Change management. You're able to track relationships, again, the relationships that are associated to your specific AWS resources, and you'll be able to review the resource configuration and history. One other area is operational troubleshooting. Config helps you easily identify the root cause of operational issues. It's basically a way you can correlate configuration changes to events that occur within an account. Lastly, in terms of the AWS config benefits, this is a big one, enterprise-wide compliance monitoring. This would typically be something that you want to deploy in an audit account. So it's centralized and allows you to have a enterprise-wide compliance view. And in this implementation, this would be a multi-account, multi-region data aggregation, so you can view your compliance status across the enterprise and identify non-compliant accounts quickly. So let's do a quick review of some basic components, and I will show you this over a screen share. Just one moment. All right, I'm sharing my screen now. All right. So in terms of AWS config, this is how a typical, this is what you see. This is the old console view, but you can try out the new one as well, which looks like this. So essentially what we're looking at here is a dashboard that provides us with an overview of non-compliant, compliant rules, the number of resources we have in a particular region. When you set up AWS config, it's region specific. So I've set up AWS config in the US West 2 Oregon region. It's recording with S3 bucket, specifically selecting AWS S3 buckets and config resource compliance for the resource types. You can record all supported resource types or specify the specific ones that you want to target in a particular region. and also you can set the data retention period. But essentially, just to kind of give you a brief overview, the dashboard provides you with a count of the number of resources in your particular region. And in this case, I have 6 S3 buckets. And then you'll be able to get your resource inventory easily from the AWS config dashboard. In terms of compliance, we want to look at the different areas of the basic AWS config components, one being the configuration recorder. This is the recorder that gets turned on when you enable AWS config. It basically, it's what stores the configuration of the supported resources in your AWS account. And it records by default all supported resource types in a given region. And then now we're going to touch in on configuration items. So we'll go on to resources here. The aggregator view that we see here is for what I discussed in terms of benefits when you consolidate and aggregate multi-account, multi-region. So I haven't set that up here, so you wouldn't see anything there. So in terms of resources, I'll pull up specifically the S3 buckets. And then I see them here. And then we can pull up Howdy Partner. And then from here, you can click on the resource timeline. And then from the resource timeline, each configuration item is basically what AWS config creates whenever it detects a change to a resource type. And that happens for as long as it's recording. You can turn off recording whenever you want and turn it back on as well. So if you see here, we have 2 events on initial creation. This is when I actually created the bucket, and then subsequent events that occurred later on. And then you can see the different relationships and the changes that occurred and the corresponding CloudTrail events. So this is it integrates pretty closely with CloudTrail, and there is a benefit for enabling both CloudTrail and config to get a full compliance view of your AWS accounts. And additionally, you also get compliance timeline. So from when a specific resource is compliant to non-compliant, you can check that. And in this particular example, I'm looking at the S3 bucket server-side encryption being enabled. It was non-compliant. And then after I made a change, it is marked as compliant. And if you go to the particular rule in this region, you can look at all the non-compliant resources and the compliant ones as well. Additionally, AWS config allows you to remediate non-compliant resources, leveraging AWS Systems Manager automation documents. These are either the AWS managed SSM documents or custom documents that you have for any given config rule. So how that looks is if we go to the specific config rule and we click on edit, we are tracking for S3 buckets having server-side encryption. It can be either default encryption, or it can be a bucket policy that explicitly restricts put object that doesn't include the encryption option. So the scope of changes we're looking at is S3 buckets. And then I've included a remediation action, which is enabling S3 bucket encryption. So when config identifies that an S3 bucket is non-compliant, it can automatically remediate that using this remediation action. And this is set to enable S3 bucket encryption. The resource ID parameter I've selected is bucket name because I want to make it for all buckets, so it's dynamic. And if you want it to be static, you can change that to just NA or something else, and then specify the explicit bucket that you want the config rule to focus on. But in these parameters, I've included the automation assume role document, assume role identity that will be used. This leverages a role that has a trust relationship with the SSM service, and it also includes the Amazon SSM automation role. This is an AWS managed policy, and I've also included a custom limited permission policy for put encryption configuration and put bucket policy, because those are the two API permissions that are needed for SSM to be able to perform the remediation. So yeah, you can do this manually or automatically. I've chosen to do it automatically, but if you were to do it manually, if you had a non-compliant resource, you would just select it and then click on remediate, and the action would be executed successfully, or if there are any errors because of permissions and so on, that would be displayed here. But in summary, AWS config allows you to get a full view of your AWS resources by taking advantage of the inventory management, and your have a complete compliance view of your resources. Lastly, before I end my overview, conformance packs is also available. It's a configuration compliance common framework. It's basically a collection of immutable AWS config rules and remediation actions that can be easily deployed in a single entity. So one conformance pack, in this case, if we deploy the S3 best practices one, this will include all the specific S3 bucket best practices. That includes the encryption, default encryption, and all the relevant S3 best practices. Those rules will be baked into one conformance pack that can't be changed and can be deployed across your organization. So this is an additional feature that's available for AWS config. So with that, I'll pass it on back to Claudine. Thank you.
Yeah, Rob, that was a dope overview of config. I learned something about conformance packs. That's super cool. Thank you for that. I don't know about you, but I'm super excited to learn more about CloudHealth. And I know that the people in the chat are also asking about CloudHealth. So without further ado, maybe we should start learning more about what CloudHealth does and how it helps AWS customers.
Awesome. Thank you, Claudine. I'll start here. I'll be sharing my screen. Please let me know when you're able to see my screen.
Yep.
Awesome. So we are here, Akshay and Shri here, providing you an overview of what CloudHealth is. This is going to be our agenda today. We are going to talk about cloud maturity curve, which is our thought process to build our vision and build a roadmap for CloudHealth. After that, I'll be giving you a platform walkthrough. Once that is done, we'll talk about CloudHealth policy workflow. I'll give you a sort of demo for CloudHealth policies, and after that, Shri will talk more about CloudHealth Secure State. So this is our cloud maturity model. This is how we think about what what pain points our users are going through, what they need to be productive in their day-to-day jobs. When you transition, as I was talking before, when you transition from private cloud to a public cloud, these are all the stages which you go through. First, you need a visibility into your spend and usage of your decentralized infrastructure that you have spent up in AWS console or AWS environment programmatically. You want to know where your spend is going and who's using what, how much you are spending on what AWS offerings. Once you are done with that, you want to know how you can optimize those spends and usage. When you know what optimizations you can execute and reduce waste, you want to define an ideal state for yourself. And you want to make sure that there are automated tools that are letting you adhere to those rules and that ideal state. And that's where governance and automation in CloudHealth kicks in. That lets you do that. Once you have an ideal state and you are sticking to it, whenever there is a shift from that, you are getting back to that ideal state, you probably want to merge that into your business KPIs. You want to know how your business is growing together with your cloud infrastructure use. So these are the phases of cloud maturity that we see from a customer's point of view. These are against 3 areas of excellence that we think pillars sort of. First is the financial management. You want to manage your finances related to cloud. Then the second thing is about operations. And the third area of excellence is security and compliance that organizations are used to organize themselves around. Now, I'm going to give you a platform walkthrough. So when you first log into CloudHealth platform, you are greeted by this nice dashboard where you can get the summary of where your spend is going and what services are you using. You get your current month spend, your month to date, and your last month spend, and you get to know what your projected monthly cost is. You get a snapshot of your past 13 months spent in AWS. You can also get granular data related to the most popular AWS services like EC2, RDS, and S3. If you want to customize it to your own KPIs, you can also do that. You can create a new dashboard, or you can copy this one and customize it, change it. You can also check out some of the other out-of-the-box dashboards that we have provided for different kinds of personas. We have an activity feed page, which gives you kind of a timeline of what changes have happened in your AWS inventory, what inventory has terminated, or what new things have come up in what regions. You will get to know about that in a timeline fashion, which is easy to comprehend. We also provide notifications for any kind of actions that have been taken from CloudHealth, via CloudHealth, I mean, into your AWS environment, and what policies have you created and when they have run within CloudHealth. If there have been any system upgrades or system changes in the CloudHealth platform itself, we also provide you notifications on those. The best part of this platform is that there is consistency across all the reports. You'll get actions to save these reports or share them with your colleague or subscribe to them across all the reports. Then we have pulse reports around your health check, your RI utilization, and your cost summary. These are very powerful reports. When you think about your KPIs, how your discount coverage looks like today. And if you want to see any groupings of your costs, I will actually go through our perspective tool, which is very powerful, and it could be used across all the platform through categories or other menu options through filters also. So you can choose any kind of perspective that you have built, the groupings of your costs and resources that you have built, and you could see the changes in any of the reports according to those. Health check report provides you more data around where you can get immediate monthly savings. If you could right size your volumes or EC2 instances, where are there loopholes related to security? If you have any untagged instances, or if there are any assets that are not associated with any line of business or any kind of function, we give you a snapshot of that also. There are some monthly savings also, operational savings that you can get by purchasing more discounts like RIs, or by right sizing your instances and volumes. This gives you a check or health check snapshot of your whole AWS environment. It's kind of a single pane of glass. When you have hundreds or thousands of AWS accounts, you don't have to go through all of those to get the information that you need. There are tons of reports in CloudHealth that are available for a quick one-click share across the platform. We have a bunch of reports around cost, usage, performance, governance, security, metrics, and containers. Today, I'm going to mostly focus on governance because we are discussing about AWS config rules and CloudTrail. So we have governance reports for AWS config rules. Now imagine a scenario. All of our enterprise customers have faced this scenario at one point in their cloud journey. There are always internal compliance teams in every enterprise company, and these compliance teams do regular audits for all the line of businesses. It could be either bi-weekly or quarterly or half-yearly, but it happens. And when you own hundreds of AWS accounts, and you have to provide those audit checks, and you have to make sure that you are in compliance with anything, with all the rules that have been created, or compliance checks, or standards that have been created in the company, it becomes a nightmare. You have to discover all the artifacts across all these accounts, and you have to make sure that all the config rules are built in all of these accounts, and you are in compliance with all of those config rules. But going through all of these accounts one by one becomes very, very difficult. So for that use case itself, we have provided a governance report dedicated to AWS config rules, where we summarize across all of your AWS accounts and all the config rules what the status is, how many compliant resources are there, and how many non-compliant resources are there. We also provide color-coded, easily identifiable state of these config rules, whether they are in compliance or not. When you click on any of these, you get to the definition of that config rule itself, what this config rule is. And when you click on any of these numbers for non-compliant resources, you get to the violation of that config rule. How many resources are there that are related to those config rules which are not in compliance? So you can get the whole list. You can either download it as a CSV, or you can share it with your colleagues, or subscribe to it. Similarly, we have for config rules also, we have a report where we provide you all the details related to a config rule and associated account. You can pull in more data associated with that, whether config rule related attributes or the account that these config rules are related to, or the region they exist in. For CloudTrail also, we have a similar report where we provide a single pane of glass experience for CloudTrail trails. You get all the information related to that, and similar to other reports, you can save it, share it, or subscribe to it. Just a bit of distraction from our config rules and CloudTrail story, because this is one of the most powerful parts of our platform, the recommendations. We provide recommendations of around how much savings plan should you be purchasing, how much your commitment should be for the next year or so. Let's look at this report. So when you provide all of this input that we are asking for, you should get the quotes of how much commitment you should have in savings plan to get the best discounts and have minimal waste. And you can also just run it for different upfront costs to get a sense of what comparisons would be between how much you are upfront spending on the savings plans and what would the amortization would look like, how much monthly savings you will get or lifetime savings you will get with these combinations of hourly commitments and upfront costs. Similar to this, we have a bunch of reports related to EC2 RIs also for analysis, modification, and optimization of EC2 RIs. One of the most useful reports for EC2 RIs that we have is around exchanges. You can automate this through our platform also. We get inputs from you around accounts, evaluation period, region, how much true up budget you have to spend on RIs. And this is what it would look like when you have done all the purchases. Right now, it's not recommending anything for our platform because we are very much optimized. But this is what it would look like when you have a history of quotes that you have built or exchanges that you have executed for your convertible RIs.
A quick question, Akshay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, is there any ability to identify and upgrade old instance types?
Old instance types, yes, I was going to get to that. So we have EC2 right sizing report where we provide recommendations for, you can create policies for this. You can create, you can provide threshold definition of what your underutilized instances would look like, how much workload should there be related to those instances. And based on that, we provide recommendations to either terminate instances or modify them. A lot of the times what we do is, if your instance is not eligible for an upgrade or, is not eligible for downsizing, it's already working appropriately, the workload is correct, and everything is fine with the instance, we try to find out whether it is eligible for an upgrade or not, whether it has the latest instance type or not. Suppose you are running a C4 .large and it's appropriately utilized. What we will do is we will provide you a recommendation to change it to C5 .large so that you could get more benefits and be future safe. So that when AWS decides to deprecate C4 .large instance types, you are not rushing towards other instance types. And you have better security patches available to you and maintenance from AWS. Does that answer your question, Rob?
Yep. Yeah, it definitely answered the question. Yeah, cool. Just to jump in, if you have any other questions in the chat, please drop them. we'll gladly answer them.
Yeah, yeah. I will talk a little bit about perspectives now, because this is the uh, backbone of our platform. Perspectives are different lenses that you can create to look at your costs. You can group your assets and associated costs to see how those costs are allocated, or that AWS spend is allocated to your applications, or to prod environments, or dev environments, or line of businesses. So for example, here I'm creating a test environment perspective. Once it creates this perspective, we will have an ability to choose what kind of an asset type we want to create this perspective for. It could be by account. You can just say AWS account, or you can say all the Amazon taggable assets, or all the assets. Doesn't matter whether it is taggable or not. And we have specific resource types also available here. So you can choose any of these, and you can either search them based on filtered criteria. You can choose any of these attributes or tags that are available. Let's say tag environment equals prod. And I will search for all the resources that comply to this filter.
This probably brings us to why you should tag your resources, right?
Exactly. Because it helps you in identifying what assets are associated with your applications, or what are in use. From security point of view also, it is good, because if there is an intruder who has spun up any resource, you wouldn't know about it unless you have a good tagging strategy, a standardized tagging strategy.
Just to jump in, additionally, when you refer in terms of security, tagging is useful to encourage your ability to use ABAC, which is attribute-based access control.
Exactly.
It makes things a lot more easier. You can have a purpose-built, identity that multiple teams can use.
Yeah. So here I would like to talk about the custom tagging functionality that CloudHealth provides. There could be scenarios where you have used up all your available tags, tag quota for resources, and you want to provide a different set of tags in CloudHealth for cost management purposes itself, or financial management purposes. And there could be scenarios where you just want a set of tags for CloudHealth management purposes. You don't want to push them into AWS and consume your tagging quota. For those cases, you can just select the resource type here, and select one of the resources or all of these resources, and take an action of modify tags. That gives you an ability to set a new tag on this asset. For example, let's say test or environment and value quality. So there are custom tags as well as original tags. Original tags are what we are sourcing from your AWS environment directly, and custom tags are what you can create in CloudHealth itself. Once you are, you have the tag that you wanted, you can create a perspective. You can just, you can create groups and just save it. and that will be available across the platform in the reports to use for chargeback and showback, for filtering the reports, or for visualizing your usage of inventory and cost of inventory by your groupings, whatever grouping you have used, function, environment, owner, line of business, whatever it is. Now, jumping back to governance part, we have policies that you can create. We are providing out-of-the-box policies also, like CIS, AWS Foundation, AWS best practices, where you will have default policies that are suggested by CIS or AWS that you should have. We will be checking those conditions, even though you don't have any config rules built in your AWS environment. We will just do that by default and give you any kinds of violations associated with that. Let's check what conditions we have here for config rules and CloudTrail. So for a config, we have not enabled for all regions. AWS config is not enabled. That's a violation. AWS best practices say that you should have AWS config enabled in all regions all the time, so that you could get more information around what historical changes your resources have been through, or what config rules have been in violation. And we have similarly for CloudTrail also, like CloudTrail CloudWatch logs are enabled or not. CloudTrail S3 bucket access, log validation. CloudTrail itself is enabled in all regions or not, just like AWS config. So these are some of the out-of-the-box policies that you can use.
Can you detect public S3 buckets?
Yes, we do. You can. What we do is we call AWS APIs. For that, we rely on AWS APIs for S3. That tells us what the bucket ACL looks like, or what bucket policies would look like, and we then provide that status in our policies. If you try to create a custom policy, let's check that out. I was going to do that next. So let's say if you have S3 bucket selected in any of your new, this is a new policy that I'm creating. And every block is a set of conditions and actions that you wanted to assess together and then execute. These conditions are what we will check, CloudHealth platform will check, and actions will be the events that will be triggered after those conditions are met. So for S3 bucket, we have configuration tags. For security, we have accessibility, as you were talking about, whether it is publicly accessible or not. And the one that I was going to talk about today was config rules.
Cool. Before you continue, I actually want to do a recap in case we have new viewers who are just joining in. We are Howdy partner, and my name is Claudine Morales. I'm joined by one of my colleagues, Rob Milka, and we are joined by Akshay Saraswat and Shri Upadhyay from CloudHealth. And Akshay is currently taking us for a spin, showing us a little bit about what CloudHealth does in order to help AWS customers gain visibility, optimize resources, govern usage, and tighten security in their AWS accounts.
Cool. Thank you, Claudine. Before I move forward with this, by creating this policy, what I would like to do is walk you through our policy workflow, how it works. So whenever users create a policy through this policy editor that I was showing you before, we show them all the data that we have collected from their AWS environment. We collect all of this data in the back end. We are polling all the time, AWS API endpoints, and we are collecting that data all the time. So that will be available in our asset database. Some of that will be in our data cubes based on whatever dimensions we have used to associate those assets or those attributes related to the assets. And we will pull all that data and we'll have it available for you in the policy editor so that you could choose the conditions that you wanted to assess or the resource types that you wanted to assess. Once you have done that, once you have created your policy blocks, that again is stored in the asset database. From the asset database, then our policy engine picks up those conditions and those triggers. Policy engine is a combination of our scheduling service, queue, and worker pool. So the scheduling service, based on whatever schedule you have selected in your policy, will schedule your condition assessment. And when that evaluation happens, for that evaluation to happen, we will put a job in the queue where a worker would pick it up and will start assessing the conditions against all the resources that are available in our database. And if there are any violations, it will start creating a summary of it and will put it again in the actions engine that's highlighted here. This is again a combination of scheduler and queue and worker pool. And what policy engine does is it puts all the jobs on the queue, and if there are any delays that you have created or put in between the actions in your custom action, it will let you do that as well. So with this, when it's a time for worker to pick that job up, it will pick it and it will run all the actions that are supposed to be executed with the payload that was given by policy engine to this job. And it will then do whatever you want it to do, either email you or do some changes directly in your resource inventory, or just invoke a Lambda function for you in AWS environment so that it could make any changes behind that security wall. What I'm going to show you, unfortunately, this happens very asynchronously, so I cannot give you a sense of what is happening when I create this and when a Lambda function triggers. So for that, what I'm going to do is I will just create a policy here. And after that, I will show you what kind of a violation payload it will send to a Lambda function and what that Lambda function could do. So let's start creating a policy. I will name it demo policy. I can also create, use perspectives here to do something specific related to, let's say, a specific perspective group. I just want to assess this condition for all the EC2 instances that are available in a red shirt perspective group. And I want it to run every morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time. And what I want is to check config rules associated with EC2 instances in this given perspective group. So I will select all the config rules that are available in my AWS environment. I will select required tags that are available in my Redshirt account and save that condition. So whenever there are violations now, this policy will report those violations back to me in a UI report. I can also subscribe to that, and as with any other report in CloudHealth, I can share it with my colleagues, or I can just save it in my CloudHealth environment. And in addition to that, what I can do is I can run a Lambda function or take any custom action or email myself to do that. Let's say I want to run a Lambda function. I would select the account that this Lambda function resides in. I'm selecting my own EC2 tagging Lambda function that I have created as an experiment, and I will save that. Once I have the conditions and actions, I will save this policy. Now this policy is available here. I can see the violations, which there are none right now because we have just created this policy and the evaluation has not run so far. Last evaluation time will be available here, which is empty right now because it's a new policy and it is enabled. I can also keep this policy if it's very annoying. I can disable it for the time being when I am remediating the violations if I'm doing it manually. When this policy runs and there are violations and it's going to trigger a Lambda function, my share EC2 tagging Lambda function will be triggered. If the CloudHealth assumed role that you have created while setting up the integration between AWS and CloudHealth, if that assumed role has the permissions to invoke Lambda functions. So this is my Lambda function that I have created for tagging EC2 instances. And this is the EC2 instance that I have created for this demo. And let's see, right now this EC2 instance doesn't have any environment or owner or any sort of that tag. Now, when any Lambda function is invoked via CloudHealth actions engine, it sends a payload together with the invocation. And for policies, that payload looks something like this, where you have resource ARNs, you have function name, region, account ID, policy name, a bunch of attributes are there in the JSON payload, and all the details associated with the affected resources. So here is the EC2 instance that I'm assuming that required tags AWS config rule would report in the violations because it doesn't have any tags right now. And when it is provided as an input to this Lambda function, this function will execute and try to find out what resources I wanted to tag and will tag accordingly. So this is a very basic Lambda function that I have created. It could be more nicer if I spend more time on this. So this is the entry point of my Lambda function where I am checking if there is an attribute called affected resources in the event dictionary. And then I'm going through all the resources to find out my demo instance. This is my demo instance here. And I am then extracting the zone name associated with this EC2 instance. And then I'm extracting AWS region because I need that to create the tag. And then I'm calling a create tag API, SDK API through GoTo3 Python SDK for AWS. I'm creating the client here, then I'm calling the create tags API, and that should just tag my resource. Let's run it and see what happens. So it has successfully completed. Let's see if there is any change. Yep. So I was providing environment tag with the value demo here in my Lambda function, and that's what has been tagged. It's as easy as that. Here, environment tag key and demo tag value. So you can completely automate using this whole workflow using the Lambda functions in AWS, in your AWS environment, behind your security wall, so that no one else outside is controlling your resources. And you can make sure that CloudHealth has access to only the Lambda functions that you know are not going to harm your resources. So that's how the whole policy automation works. There are also scenarios where probably you want your in-house built software to take care of all these remediations, and you just want to get all the information related to these policies. So for that, what you can do is you can go to our CloudHealth API documentation, which is in the references here. You can go there and you can check out our policy APIs. These policy APIs are for reading all kinds of policies that you have created in CloudHealth platform. You can read all the policy blocks also associated with those policies. And once you know what policy block you are interested in or policy you are interested in, you can call for policy violations by providing these parameters, policy ID and policy block ID. And then you will get all the violations that have been reported by this specific policy that you have created. The one we used here was for EC2 tagging config rules, and whatever information it provides to you, you can use that in your in-house tools to take whatever kind of actions you want to take. If you are using a business management integration, something like Jira, Confluence, or TrueSight, you can create tickets in those softwares using these violations so that appropriate owners could remediate those. Now I will pass that on to Shri for CloudHealth Secure State.
Thanks, Akshay.
Hi, Shri. We're glad to hear your voice again because it sounds like you haven't spoken in the last hour.
You and I was very curious to start talking. But thanks for that great overview, Akshay. I'm going to be quick here. I think we are running a little bit short on time. I'm going to talk about another product we have in our portfolio. It's called CloudHealth Secure State. And this is a SaaS tool focused on remediating and reducing your security and compliance risk by providing you with real-time insights. In simple words, it looks at configurations of all of your cloud resources. And I think one of the things that I noticed when I talk to our customers is that there's always confusion about what are the shared responsibilities, right? I think AWS makes it very, very clear, where are the lines drawn for what customer has to do and what AWS will do for them. I think that's where it happens, right? AWS manages, fantastically, the data centers and all the resources for all of our customers, and also protects them, the security of the data itself, and they have, they follow all the compliance frameworks by themselves. And when we, as end users, we use EC2, S3, and all of these other services, it's our responsibility to ensure that all of them are configured appropriately, right? So whether it's enabling encryption on your databases or your S3 buckets, or protecting your EC2 instances from being publicly exposed. I think that's one of the points, Claudine, I think you brought about S3 buckets being publicly accessible. And I think I love the fact when Amazon made the switch and made like S3 by default, blocked all of the public access. I think that was one of the fantastic moves.
Maybe we should talk about why that is important. I know that so earlier I talked about how the technical baseline review that we do here in the AWS Partner Network, we require partner solutions to have certain best practices in place. And protecting S3 buckets is actually also one of those best practices that we consider to be core. Now, why should you protect your S3 buckets?
Yeah, I think it boils down to a simple thing, right? You have uploaded a ton of your data over there. And if you have S3 buckets publicly exposed, what that means is anyone can go and grab the data, right? So it's not protected by any kind of authentication. There is no login or anything of that sort required. And if there is a malicious actor out there, they can randomly search for some bucket names, with a specific bucket URL pattern, and go through that. And if they find your data, which you might have seen in the news happening with a lot of bigger organizations, they can misuse that information. So you definitely want to protect that data from unauthorized usage. You just want users maybe from within your organization or users coming from specific networks only to access that information.
Totally. Thanks for that. And in fact, I think that a lot of these high-profile cases where, we hear on the news about security breaches, many of them are actually caused by accidentally public S3 buckets leaking sensitive information. So this is really important.
Yeah, exactly. And today, and that's what Secure State tries to help you with, right? And today I'm going to wear a couple of hats. Secure State is targeted towards SecOps persona as well as the DevOps persona. And if you're a SecOps persona and you use a tool like Secure State, it detects all the misconfigurations that are there within your account. It does that by mapping them across different compliance frameworks. Like if you have to follow by GDPR, HIPAA, PCI, or even CIS benchmarks. And one of the things I'm very excited about is whenever you launch any kind of security tool, your developers have probably have been using AWS for a long time than security folks themselves, right? So you're always going to have something technical debt within your account, right? So that's what this dashboard shows you. So as soon as you hook up Secure State, CloudHealth Secure State to your AWS environment, you'll see a number of findings, and you'll see how many rules have passed. Over here in my account, you can see it says 62.75% of the rules have passed, which means the remaining 37% are non-compliant. And over here in the dashboard, you can, it just for a security ops person, it just tells them, okay, these are the 5 top violating rules and top 5 violating objects as well. And what these rules do within your account is they basically monitor a particular pattern of configuration, right? So over here, we have simple things like SNS topic is not configured for log delivery failure, right? Our AWS root account is configured with multiple access keys, which is a no-no, right? And many more such resources across a set of AWS services. So if I go here in the filter, you can see auto scaling, cloud formation, EC2, ECS, EKS, and a bunch others, right? And as a security ops persona, you definitely want to fine tune these rules within your organization, right? Here you can see that Secure State offers more than 490 rules within your account. Maybe all of them are not relevant to you, or maybe they are, right? So Secure State does give you an option to enable or disable these rules. Obviously, you need to provide a reasoning, and then this goes to the admin of the Secure State platform, which is usually the SecOps team, which decides whether to allow this request to go through or not. And once you have these rules within your account, Secure State generates something called as findings, which are basically violations which are found within across these accounts. And this is where we have a differentiator, right? So here I can see a lot of different EC2 instances being listed. So if I click on one of these EC2 instances, this is where you will now see that it's plotting a graph of all the connected resources with this EC2 instance, right? So you can see here, this EC2 instance over here has an port 22 accessible from internet from any source, which could be critical in most cases. So you have this EC2 instance, and on the right side, you can see all of the data related to that particular instance. Not just that, I can also see that it's connected to a particular security group, which has a security rule. And over here, I can see port 22. So without even going to my AWS console, I can see all of the configuration of all of these objects which are connected to the EC2 instance. Not just that, earlier when Rob and Claudine mentioned about CloudTrail, we do leverage that data as well within Secure State platform. So you can see here the activity log which we generate, which is basically all the actions that were taken from within your AWS account on this particular resource. So I can click on this view JSON and you can see all of the detail that this particular resource has, right? I can see the ARN, I can see which account number it belongs to, and the details about whether the particular instance is running or not. I can also look at other previous historical data. So you can see here that this particular IAM user is one of my colleagues who created this instance. And this is important for the security ops persona, because now you can take this information and go to that specific team or to that specific developer and tell them, hey, you have to fix this particular configuration issue. In this case, this is port 22, but it might be something else as well. And just to let you know, you can also look at all of the other dependent violations on this particular instance. So within Secure State, we not only just look at CloudTrail data, but we also leverage guard duty events. Guard duty is another fantastic service from AWS, which you definitely must use as well, which looks at all of the different attacks happening from outside your environment. Like there are maybe unauthorized users using logging into your AWS accounts, or there's like brute force attack happening on this particular instance. So over here you can see, okay, this instance has port 22 open, it has a public IP address, and it has a guard duty event, right, which says SSH brute force attack. So here you can make sense of, okay, because I left this instance publicly open and left the port 22 open, this was about to happen, right? And then you can take actions on these particular resources. Not just that, let's say for some reason you have a resource and you know that this has to be public and you don't want this particular violation to show up. You can just request for suppression of violation. Basically, this request goes to the admin of Secure State, or you can suppress this rule entirely, right? Where do we see this? Let's say you have an S3 bucket. The S3 buckets are not supposed to be public, but if you have a marketing S3 bucket, which has, let's say, PDFs and other marketing content which you want your customers to access, maybe it's okay for that S3 bucket to be publicly open, right? And that's where you might want to suppress that violation so that you don't have noise within your environment. One thing I always get asked by customers is, hey, I have some specific requirements which are not covered by these compliance frameworks, right? Like port 22, port 443, and all of these standard ports are covered. So that's where Secure State offers a feature called as Explore. Like the name suggests, it allows you to look into what is happening within your environment. So I can say AWS, let's say I just want to look at all the EC2 instances, right? I can just click run, and there you go. So here on this page, you can see all the EC2 instances that are there within my account. I can click on one of these and you can see the details on the right side are updated. And I can also view more additional information if need be. So let's say I want to look at all the EC2 instances and probably all the security groups that are attached to it. So I can just say security group. And now it shows me a relationship between all of the security groups as well as the EC2 instances. Pretty cool, right? Now I can say, let's say I want to look at all of the security groups, and maybe I also want to look at sorry. Yeah. I also want to look at a specific security group ID, right? I can just restrict it. Let's say I just want to look at Jenkins security group over here. I can click on this, and now you can just see the instances related to Jenkins security group. So, and you can do this across, just names, or you can do this across the rules as well. I can say for this, and also, if the security group rule has port 8080 open. And once I've written my rule, you have found out this pattern. All you can do is simply click create rule with this query. And from that point onwards, Secure State will start tracking what is happening within across your account. And just for simplicity's sake, we have also added, the ability to directly view the security violations right on this page. So I can add something called as layers, which allows me to look at all of this. So over here, this EC2 instance has a security score of 376 and has 8 violations attached to it. And the security group over here, you can see the score is 82 and has 4 violations attached to it. So that directly tells the persona, the security persona, hey, there's something wrong with this environment. And once that you have this, you can now set up alerting, and you can integrate with Slack. We have different integrations available. You can integrate with Slack, or you can integrate with Amazon SQS, or you can send simply an email to those specific teams. And the way you would group all of these teams is by projects. We have a concept called projects, where you put all of your different AWS accounts together, so that you're not spamming all in the different teams who don't have to necessarily know about this information. And once that is there, you can go and look at the compliance dashboard, which basically tells you across your different compliance frameworks how you're performing, which were the latest new findings seen in last 7 days, how many of them are open, and how many of them are resolved. And one thing about the resolved violations, Secure State will automatically detect if you have made any configuration changes. Let's say there was a S3 bucket publicly open, and if you went ahead and modified it, it automatically moves the rule from open to resolved. And this is important because at the end of the month or end of the quarter, you might be generating a report for your CIO or your chief security officer, and that's where you want to remove all of this noise, or you want to basically give a simple report saying, we had these many violations and we were able to fix the majority of them. And that is captured in the trends dashboard as well, right? Over here, you can see on the top right, you can see the new findings as well as the resolved findings. So you want the resolved findings to always catch up to the new findings. And that's one of the KPIs that all of the security teams should measure by. So this was, a good, value for security persona. But if you're from DevOps persona, you're probably using tools like Terraform, right? So here I have my VS Code, where I have a Terraform template, right? And here I'm going to deploy this particular app right now. So it's going to have 2 web servers. It'll have an app layer and an API layer and a database load balancer, and then 2 EC2 instances which are running MySQL. I can swap these instances even with RDS. And I have all of this code in the repository if you want to run it by yourself. So here I have described various resources where Terraform helps you automate all of your infrastructure needs. So I'm creating a VPC, I'm creating key pairs, I'm creating a subnet, and then some security, some route tables, internet gateways, as well as some security groups, right? There is always an assumption I've seen in security, with security products. They assume that developers don't exactly know about security. That's not true, right? Developers do care about the security aspects. They do understand that databases are not supposed to be publicly exposed. Your API layers should also be hidden in private subnets if possible. So over here, you can see that there is a security group which says allow only from the VPC CIDR port 22, which is a good practice. Allow port 443, that's true over here because it's a web security group, and allow port 80. But if this was some other layer, so here you can see the application security group, which was the second layer over here, this Django app. Here you don't want port 22 to be open, and the port 8000 also should be hidden, right? Once you've identified, once you've built all of this, all you're going to do is you'll just commit this to your repository. And today I'll be using GitLab to show you, but essentially you can build this kind of pipeline with any tool of your choice. And once I push this within my environment, what you'll see is as soon as the deployment is complete, secure state will start tracking and it will check if there are any violations. And secure state can do that because of all the APIs that it provides. So that is a very critical approach for most of the security tools in today's day, right? Developers are not going to go to the dashboard and look at your pretty charts. They want APIs which they can integrate from within their pipeline. So I have here 3 different stages. There's a build and test, there's a deploy app, and then there's security check. And this security check is the phase where I'm going to leverage secure state APIs and check, okay, were there any violations that occurred when this deployment went? If they did, I can send a Slack alert. Right now, I've set it to send me an email notification. But you can also revert the pipeline because Terraform provides you with that ability to just delete your infrastructure once you're deployed. So if I click on this, you can see here it's creating all of these different resources. It's creating a database load balancer. It's going through this phase. If I come to my AWS dashboard, let's just click refresh, and I'm going to filter this. Let's see if I can find the name. So you can see here the API fit cycle 2. This is the application layer which I'm deploying, and this is filtering it to that specific instance. Now we'll go back and we'll see, okay, this deployment has completed, and you'll see it completed at 22:26:43. And now I can go and see what happened in my security check phase. So in my security check, this is where I leverage the secure state APIs. You can see here it says checking if violations exist, and then it says shared SSH key found. This is one of the violations which secure state can track on top of your CIS and other frameworks. And let me just quickly explain what it means over here. So if I come here and if I look at my instances over here, the management, which is my jump box, which is publicly facing, and my API layer seem to be using the same SSH key. So you can see here it says administrator key. And the issue with that is if someone can compromise and jump onto your management box, they'll be easily able to jump into your API box from that management box. And that's because we just allowed all the instances within that VPC CIDR to be accessible on this private IP. So that's a major critical issue. So now you can report this back to your developer, or in this case, the developer already knows what is happening. Obviously, you can add more details. You can add links to knowledge base articles, which can then help the developer to go and fix this issue. And this helps the developer because they are always staying within the tool that they are used to, right? Whether it is GitLab or it is code commit, code build, or code deploy from Amazon, it's the ecosystem that developers like to be in. And that's the value over here. And just to show you how the shared SSH violation looks on the secure state dashboard, so I will just come here and type filter by SSH. And you can see here that we have the SSH violation. And if I open this, you can see the infrastructure which we just deployed, right? It has all of the different aspects over here. We deployed all of these resources. And you'll see that all of these instances share common SSH key. Not just that, you'll notice here there's an IAM instance profile attached to these private instances. So what that means is if someone compromises one of my publicly facing EC2 instances and uses that same SSH key to get into my private instances, not only they're compromising this instance, but they can also use all the permissions attached using this IAM profile, right? So in this case, it looks like the one which was attached was EC2 admin, and which means that they can take any admin action within this environment, right? Maybe the policy allows them to create or destroy EC2 instances. This is where it makes it very catastrophic, right? It was a simple misconfiguration, shared SSH key, but now you realize that, oh, okay, there was an IAM profile which was attached to these instances, like these private instances. So these are the configuration aspects which Secure State helps you in looking at, right? It's not just looking at S3 buckets or not just EC2 instances, but it's looking across a horizontal layer of services. It's looking at EC2 configuration, it's looking at route tables, it's looking at IAM policies, and what are the different rules associated with them, and then suggesting you a risk score that helps you manage your environment. So that's about it for my demo.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Just a question, I guess. I like your overview of CloudHealth Secure State. So in terms of the offering, I really like how it makes it easier for DevOps engineers to shift left. Can you expand on why there has been a challenge to shift left, and how your solution basically closes the gap?
Yeah, so I think you pointed out perfectly right, and we want to shift left, as much as possible. What that exactly means is you want to detect these violations in as earlier stages as possible. That helps it because once, all of us know that once the app is in production, making any modification to that becomes very cumbersome, right? Because it might break a few things, and that has, a lot of your business logic and so on and so forth. The second thing is the need for APIs, right? So if you want to detect anything in real time, if you want anything to be shifted left, you want the tools to give you that information, right where you are. You don't want to, go back to the dashboard, okay, look at what are my violations, and then come back and fix them, right? So there is always, I always try to refer to, the mean time to detect and mean time to respond. So how fast can you detect these, right? In our case, if you remember, we did 2246, and then this was in 2256. Within 10 seconds, we were able to detect that there was a violation. And we were able to do that because it was with the help of these APIs. So it's becoming harder to move to a left because developers like to use the tools that they are used to, and security also wants to ensure that all of the rules are compliant. So trying to find the right balance where the developers also feel comfortable and the security personas also get the information or the rules in place. I think that's where the challenges for shift left arises, and that's what we're trying to address with Secure State by providing you with a robust set of APIs which work with all the tools that you're used to, whether it's Terraform or GitLab or any other CI/CD tool out there.
Thank you for that. All right, so Claudine, do you want to do a recap, and then we'll answer any additional questions?
Yeah, I was actually trying to see if there were questions in the chat, but if you have just recently joined us, this is Howdy Partner. My name is Claudine. I'm a Partner Solutions Architect here at AWS. I'm joined by my colleague, Rob, and we are joined by Akshay and Shri from CloudHealth. CloudHealth just did a demo of their tool. They actually walked us through how CloudHealth could help you gain visibility into your AWS infrastructure, optimize resources. They help you govern usage of AWS resources, and they help you tighten your security, which is very important. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Do you have any questions in the chat?
While the chat starts getting us questions, I guess I have a question for CloudHealth. What are the two different products? How do the two different products work together, or do they? And what's the strategy around that?
Actually, do you want to take that?
Yeah, definitely. I can do that. So the strategy here is that we wanted to keep a robust portfolio for all kinds of personas, and we wanted to provide them what they needed. We didn't want them to get distracted because of all the things that we are providing. There are so many things happening in their cloud environment, and there are so many tools available to do all of these things. And that's why we created 2 different tools that could be leveraged by different personas who are interested in a very specific domain. And so the people who are mostly handling their security by themselves, they are not at a very large scale right now. They may just want visibility. And for that, maybe one product would do good enough. But if they are very mature and they want a robust solution for security, they would probably want an additional upgrade over that one product.
Okay, so in terms of CloudHealth on AWS, and then what you went through, actually you went through CloudHealth on AWS, and Sri went through
Secure State.
Secure State.
Yeah.
So are those in terms of the licensing and cost, is that something that people can reach out to you on? Like, where can they get additional information?
They can definitely get additional information on CloudHealth website. They can reach out to our sales team. They can request for a demo, and we will proactively get in touch with them. There are lots of ways to do that.
I just dropped the links for how they can do that. And go ahead.
Yeah, and also our handles are already there in the video. So if you want to reach out to any of us, Sri or me, we are happy to chat with you and discuss any licensing things or give you a demo of the whole product or whatever part of the platform you are interested in.
And just to add to that, I think we are listed on AWS Marketplace. That's one of the options customers like to take and explore as well.
Yeah, that's the easiest way to get it.
Fantastic. And you both are actually getting a shout out in the chat. The viewers think that you both delivered really good presentations. So thank you so much for that.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, we're super happy that you were able to join us today. I think that's it, Rob.
Yeah, I think
any other questions?
I don't think there are any other questions. I dropped the marketplace links as well. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, Howdy Partner airs every Monday and Wednesday. And with that, we'll see you with the next episode.
Howdy Partner.
Thank you.